thank you for joining us today. We're very excited about this program to have a live virtual presentation by Rear Admiral Lorin Selby, Chief of Naval Research. It's always a great day at the Chamber of Commerce with our approximate 1,400 members when we get to hear about supply chain opportunities and business opportunities with the U.S. government, and in particular the United States Navy. So very excited about this program. First of all, we want to make sure that along with the El Paso Chamber of Commerce hosting this event, we had great support and partnership from the Energetics Technology Center and Vessel LLC. And it's also brought to you in partnership today with the UTEP Center for Space Exploration and Technology Research and the UTEP WM Center for 3D Innovation. Before we turn it over to our next speaker, David, would you like to discuss anything on the importance of this call for the Chamber or say a few words?
Well, let me just say thank you, Vijay. I would only say that none of this would be possible without the support of, obviously, the city of El Paso. And I also just wanted to make sure I single out, I know we discussed this a little bit in the preview session we just had, but none of this would be possible without Dr. Chaudhry and the folks from UTEP. So we're extremely pleased to be partnering with them on defense and aerospace sort of supplier development here in El Paso, and very lucky to be part of this. So let me hand it over to the next speaker with those comments. Thank you.
Great. We'd like to formally introduce, again, a great partner to this effort is Vessel LLC, and their CEO is with us today, Chris Danek. So he's been very instrumental in helping this process go forward and set this event up with the Chamber. So Mr. Danek will go ahead and give you the floor at this time. Thank you, sir.
Vijay, thank you very much. And I also want to thank Dr. Chaudhry and Dr. Wicker from UTEP for welcoming us in as partners in the initiative that they're leading. Dr. Chaudhry and Dr. Wicker are leading an economic development agency grant to foster innovation and to cultivate the innovation ecosystem of El Paso. And this event series is one of their initiatives under that grant. So I thank you very much. And this is also the direct outcome of Mr. Bob Smith from the Department of the Navy, Office of Small Business Innovation and Research. His office has decided that they would like to participate and be part of the effort in the El Paso innovation ecosystem through their nonprofit partner, Energetics Technology Center, which is how I come to be here. So I would like to let you know that we'll have a word from Professor Chaudhry and Chamber at the closing of the event. And I also want to thank the community, because there's a very engaged community here, a broad cross-section. All of the folks who are here are worthy of recognition. There's a few folks that I'd like to specifically thank before we get started. Obviously, from the Department of the Navy, there's a contingent from the Office of Naval Research, and we're very excited to hear from Admiral Selby. Introducing him will be Mr. Jimmy Smith. He's the Director of the Office of Small Business Programs. I'll say a few words about him in a moment. And also a thank you really for the initiative to partner with the Department of the Navy in El Paso that has come from the SBIR, STTR program, and Director Robert Smith is here today. We have from the Office of Congresswoman Escobar, two folks, Susanna Bird, the District Director in El Paso, and Alex Sabater, the Military Legislative Assistant. Thank you very much for being here. From the University of Texas at El Paso, Roberto Osegueda is the Vice President. He's in the Office of Research and Sponsored Projects. And I've already mentioned Professor Chaudhry and Professor Wicker. And we've heard from El Paso Chamber, Vijay Smith, and also from David Jerome. We have Arlene Carroll, who's the incoming chair of the El Paso Chamber Board of Directors, and she's Senior VP of Commercial Lending at Westar Bank. Laila Melendez, who's the CEO of Workforce Solutions. Alma Aranda, Project Manager for Workforce Solutions. We have broad support from the city and also the County of El Paso. From the City of El Paso today, we have Jessica Herrera, who is the Director Economic Development for the city, Kelly Kotlik, Economic Development Program Administrator for the City of El Paso Economic International Development Department. From the Texas Military Preparedness Commission, Benjamin Miranda, the commissioner. And we have really put small business and the innovation ecosystem at the center of this event. So I'd like to recognize just a few of the folks who registered early for this program. Hunter Taylor is the founder of Tailored Alloys, a company focused on cutting edge metallurgy development for additive manufacturing. His company is an NSF SBIR Phase 1 awardee. Diego Fogel, the CEO of Printari. This is a commercial additive manufacturing company that has spun out of a business class that's taught by Dr. Wicker. Philip Morton, CEO of PM Technologies, a spin out from the Keck Center. Vaughn Washington, president of IDA Technologies, and Jorge Morales from Econity US. We also would like to recognize some of our partners from larger companies, which is a very important part of driving innovation forward into the Navy and into the national defense ecosystem. Roger Camp, Director of Strategic Development from General Atomics, is here. I recognize from the participants, there are many other VIPs worthy of recognition, but we would like to just kind of move forward in the program. So I would like to say thank you. And there's an opportunity for some interaction in the Q&A as we follow the Admiral's talk. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jimmy Smith. And I've had the pleasure to listen to him talk a few times and to also become a colleague in a sense. He is your small business advocate in the Navy. He's the director of the Office of Small Business Programs, and he and his organization have outperformed all of the targets for small business that the Navy has set out. It's really quite incredible. And so we see in small business and in the Office of Small Business Innovation Research, we see that the Navy is leading the way across the entire federal government, DoD and beyond, in terms of performance in engaging small business and innovation. So as I looked at Mr. Jimmy Smith's background to give the introduction, I found some amazing things in his career. He was the program manager and the R&D manager for the Columbia-class submarines. He was also the director of nuclear weapons safety, and in that capacity, with the Navy's stance, was responsible for safeguarding 70% of the nuclear stockpile. I think those two things are in the past, and along with the fact that he's been engaged in the past and more recently in STEM outreach programs, and what he's doing today in the Office of Small Business really demonstrates that he knows how to get it done, and he is able to get it done. And this is what the Office of Small Business Programs brings to you. And again, just a word of thanks before we turn it over to Mr. Smith. You see that the Navy takes a holistic approach to partnering. And I'm so excited to hear from Mr. Smith as he introduces Admiral Selby. Jimmy, please.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that introduction. And it's my esteemed honor today to introduce Rear Admiral Lorin Selby. He is the 26th Chief of Naval Research, and he actually hails from Baltimore, Maryland, and also a nuclear engineer undergraduate and nuclear engineering master's degree, undergraduate, University of Virginia, master's from MIT. He is a very smart individual, and I like to call him my friend from time to time when we're on the same side of the table. He's a very good guy. Being the Chief of Naval Research, STEM, and all things research and development in the Navy after the next and the Navy this nation needs falls under Admiral Selby. Number of scientists and engineers work for him, PhDs all around, and they're really using cutting edge technologies and capability to move this Navy forward. So I won't, go into a great deal about his background, but operational tours, he's a submariner. That's really why I like him the most out of everything that he's accomplished. Great guy all around. He has some great shore tours and sea tours, and you can't say enough positive things about this guy. He's absolutely awesome. So I hope everybody straps in and prepares for this, the remarks that he has today because he is a rock star, folks. Let me tell you. All right, Admiral Selby, over to you.
All right, Jimmy, thank you very much. All right, Steve, thank you for having me today. El Paso Chamber of Commerce, I really appreciate this opportunity and all the other associated sponsors of this event. It's really great to be coming to you today from my headquarters here in Arlington, Virginia. That's where I am right now. This is where the Office of Naval Research hails from. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about kind of who we are, kind of what we do, and then I'm going to give you some thoughts about technology, where it's going, and then a little bit about obviously small business. That's probably a big interest, and then a little bit about STEM. That's kind of what I want to kind of go through today. So I have been to El Paso. I was telling the group earlier before we kind of started and went live here that I've been out there. I think I've been out there, well, probably at least 3 times. I've driven through once, on a cross-country trip. And then when I was the Naval Surface Warfare Center commander a couple years ago, I had to go out to White Sands, New Mexico, a couple times. So I would always fly in El Paso, overnight there, and then drive out to White Sands and do my business out there, and then come back. And I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but I remember one of the best steaks I've ever had was at a restaurant somewhere in El Paso. I stayed at the Marriott, so it wasn't too far from there. I have no idea what it was. If I go back, I'm going to have to search that place out, and maybe I'll have dinner with some of you fine folks out there. But hey, I'm really happy to be with you. Jimmy, really appreciate the introduction. I love talking to people about what we do in the Navy. And, invariably, we do this with, obviously, there's large companies, but I get really most excited about engaging smaller companies, academics, universities, professors, folks at research institutes, because I think they're kind of more closely attuned to some of the problem sets I'm trying to get after. And that's what I like doing. And I like also providing you a venue, a pathway to get to my organization, to either give us ideas or maybe even one day doing business with us. And so I'll give you at the very end of this a website you can go to if you got an interest in trying to do business with us. Get you in our small business office, as well as get you in our departments, and you can find a POC to work with. But really, really excited to be here. So let's go ahead, Robbie, if you can start pushing slides there. Okay, thank you very. There you go. All right, go to the next slide. Where you just were. All right, here we are. All right, so as the Chief of Naval Research, I lead something called the Naval Research Enterprise. And the Naval Research Enterprise is comprised of the Office of Naval Research, ONR, which is again where I am right now. I've also got the Navy's corporate laboratory, the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory. That's actually here in Washington, D.C., so right across the Anacostia River from where I am right now. That is it'll be 100 years old here in 2023. So we're coming up on 100 years. ONR is coming up on its 75th anniversary next year. So these organizations have been around really providing some of the cutting edge science, technology, innovations for the nation, not just the Navy, for the entire nation for almost 100 years. So it's pretty amazing. It's an amazing place to work, and just kind of leave it at that. To the right there, you see 2 other organizations. One is ONR Global. So when I engage international groups, they're always interested in this organization. This organization is headquarters in London, but we have other offices throughout the globe. We are situated in parts of the world where there's a lot of research going on in applications that have a kind of a naval technology applications we're concerned about. We've got a couple folks in South America. We've got folks obviously in London. I've got folks in Prague. I've got folks in Singapore, Melbourne, Australia. Tokyo, Japan's got a larger presence for the entire Western Pacific area. So we have offices really all over the world, literally trying to be there to partner with the host country's academic institutions, so that the United States is looked at as the partner of choice in those parts of the world. And it's a really amazing organization. That other organization, PMR 51, does a lot of, it's very sensitive work that we do that we also do right here in the DC area. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's kind of the way the portfolio breaks down. So the Navy's RDT&E budget is about $20 billion, okay? It's broken into these different basic, they call them BA or basically finance categories, okay? 6.1 through 6.7. I, as the Chief of Naval Research, really handle the 6.1, 2, and 3. And so 6.1 basic research, think of that research that's being done in a university laboratory. It's laboratory work, it's research like type work. It's working on technologies that may not yet have an application, but it's an idea that's being worked upon. It can be something like physics, mathematics, or some more exotic science that we're interested in trying to study. That then progresses into what's called applied research, or 6.2 budget category. Again, that's where you start having a kind of a applied application for that technology. There's something you can start realizing it could be done with that technology. And then 6.3 is more of the development of kind of a demonstration of that. So advanced technology development, really kind of a demonstration of the technology. And then beyond that, it's the other parts of the Navy that do the rest of this, the prototyping in 6.4 and all this stuff beyond that. But again, 6.1, 2, and 3 is really O&R's part of that. All told, about $2.5 billion that's in my category. But again, $20 billion total for the entire Navy's RDT&E budget. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do I break down my portfolio at O&R? Okay, so I've got integrated research portfolios. So top left, or the left side of this, is Code 31. So these are our electronic warfare, cyber, any kind of spectrum allocation things. Networks in general are a part of this category. The next area, ocean, battle space, and expeditionary access, we call that code, that's Code 32. A lot of unmanned systems, unmanned underwater vehicles, a lot of submarine applications, a lot of just oceanographic research. We still do a tremendous amount of oceanographic research. The oceans are very complex. It's almost like an organism, and it's a system of systems. And really what we found is that you can't just study the ocean alone. You have to also study the atmosphere above the ocean, and you even have to understand how space in the upper ionosphere acts above the atmosphere, because these are all linked together. And to really fully understand the interactions that happen within the ocean, whether it's fronts and eddies or other kind of phenomena that we care very much about, you have to understand the entire system, really, literally from the bottom of the seafloor to the upper ionosphere into space. And so we model all that. We do a great deal of research in that area. And of course, you can think of some applications. Clearly, there's a lot of this is weather related. How do we predict weather better? And that's a huge factor for a marine unit needing to know that as they predict when they can do a landing onto a hostile beach. Last thing you want is to have the weather cause you more problems than the enemy does. And so the weather is a huge factor for us. Also, the ocean environment is critical for our acoustic abilities that our submarines utilize to find other submarines or other contacts. And so you need to understand how sound behaves and know how that sound is going to propagate and what the effects are of the weather and other things on your environment. So that's what happens in Code 32. The middle there, mission capable, persistent, survivable naval platforms. This is Code 33. This is a lot of the systems that are on our existing ships, submarines, and aircraft carriers today. Piping systems, electrical systems, corrosion. A huge issue, obviously, in saltwater environments. We still do a tremendous amount of research in corrosion, trying to find ways to prevent corrosion or at least mitigate it and then deal with it if it does, in fact, happen. Ideally, try to prevent it, but sometimes you can't do that. But some of this is material selection. So we do a lot of research in materials in this area. And then additive manufacturing. I heard some discussion about one of the groups here being sponsored or sponsoring this event as an additive manufacturing group. So we do a lot of work in this area in trying to model additive manufacturing or advanced manufacturing techniques. If you think this through, we've been dealing with what I call traditional manufacturing, since the Iron Age. I mean, we've been dealing with metals for hundreds of years, and we have just tremendous amounts of data that can describe how a material is going to behave under stress, under strain, what kind of cracking, fracture toughness. All those material properties are critical as we select materials and then put them on things like submarines and try to determine how long it's good for before you have to be concerned that something's going to go awry with that material. We don't have as much of that information when it comes to additively manufactured materials. And so instead of trying to collect the thousands of coupons necessary to do the testing that would be required to come up with that type of information, what if it can use modeling and simulation to try to do some of that for us and try to accelerate this process? So we're doing a great deal of work in that area to try to model these behaviors, these printers. And again, anybody who's into that printers, there's many different types of printers out there, and depending upon the temperatures involved, the materials involved, even the orientation, physical orientation of the way the thing prints can totally change the grain structures and, as a result, the physical properties of the materials. So we're trying to get after that. That's all Code 33. The next one, warfighter performance, Code 34. This is kind of the human aspect of warfighting, whether it's a Marine or a sailor. There's a lot of aspects of the way we make decisions, the way we process information that we study in this area. This area also was responsible for coming up with basically artificial blood. Believe it or not, we did that several years ago at the height of the wars in the Middle East. A lot of obviously IED casualties, a lot of people losing a lot of blood. This became a huge concern, and so we actually did some stuff with artificial blood. Also artificial intelligence, because it's closely linked to decision science and the way humans make decisions. We do a lot of work in this code in artificial intelligence. The far right, code 35, these are your airborne things. So whether it's a next-gen aircraft, if it's a missile system, even a directed energy system, a laser, a railgun, projectiles, that's all in code 35 on the far right. And then across the bottom, Naval Accelerator is our newest code, code 36. And this is about finding ways to, it says, accelerate taking a technology from a laboratory idea and then getting it through quickly the entire R&D stroke into the acquisition stroke to get it onto a platform or in the hands of a Marine or a sailor somewhere in the fleet. And that's what that's all about. Next slide. Okay, so talking naval acceleration. One of the new things that's come onto the scene for the Navy here in the last couple of years is something we call Naval X. Okay, so our Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition is a guy named Mr. Hondo Gertz. Secretary Gertz, when he was down at SOCOM, he was in Tampa, Florida, before he came in the Navy, put together this thing called SOFWER, Special Operating Forces X. Okay, X, experimental, bringing things in the front door and showing to sailors or in that case, special operators. So Naval X is an organization which is trying to do the same thing for the Navy and the Marine Corps team. This organization kind of sits outside the fence line of a base. Most of the folks there, while some may be military, some may be civilian, you don't know because they're all wearing civilian clothes. The price of entry, as it were, is low because you don't have to get a CAT card or get access to a base to get in. You can just knock on the door and walk in and say, hey, I've got an idea about some technology I want to show you guys. And they will then help find you the right person to speak to in the Navy to show that idea to. A lot of other words here about different parts of the process, obviously SIBR, STTR, and I'll talk more about that later. But this organization is really trying to change the culture within the Navy and Marine Corps for how we look at technology. We've also got something called tech bridges. Tech bridges are, I call them like outposts. So these are small entities around the country, usually in close proximity to one of our warfare centers that we have across the country. And this is a small organization, again, usually, not always, and we're trying to make it so it always, but outside the fence line of that base, again, so you can easily get to it. They're there to help you, folks that don't deal with the military every day, navigate the myriad of acronyms and code this, code that, so you know how to get in the front doors that were with an idea and to reach the right person within the Navy Marine Corps team. And then the far right there on the bottom, you see it says venture capital. So yes, in fact, we are looking at how do we get into the venture capital space. We're recognizing that this is kind of the way high tech works in places like Silicon Valley, Austin, or Boston. Somebody has a good idea. You go find some venture capital investors who are willing to put some money in on your idea to basically fund you to take that idea from an early S&T phase into something that's a minimum viable product that can actually be shown to others and potentially sold to others. So we want to do the same thing. Now it's a little unique when it comes to military systems, but even our most ardent naval system, like a submarine, say, or a torpedo, there are parts of it, like maybe autonomy, maybe some software application. There are parts of it that are applicable to kind of anybody. And so we are finding that we think we can actually utilize venture capital approach to actually establish things like an autonomous system group. And then maybe the Navy puts in some money and maybe some others will put some money in. And then all together the tides will raise all boats and we'll all benefit from those investments. So that's a new thing we're getting into. That's very, very exciting. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to riff a little bit on kind of technology. I want to tell you why going faster is so much, why it's so important to us here in the Navy. Really, it's important to all of us, whether you're in the Navy or not, because technology continues to race, at us at a lightning pace. And I think all of us would probably agree that the amount of information you're bombarded with at any given moment on any given day is pretty much at the point of your brain's ability to comprehend it. And no longer can you just easily assimilate the things that are coming at you and have a few moments to reflect upon it and then try to ponder what this means and then respond. It's just getting to the point where you really can't do that. This slide comes out of a book called The Second Machine Age, and you can see across the bottom there. It's kind of dated. It's probably about 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. But this graphic comes out of that book, and I've always loved this graphic and the story that I think it portends. So let me just explain this to you. So the left-hand side is the Social Development Index, okay? And you can see at the very bottom that it is staying fairly flat through really the majority of humankind's existence on the planet. If you look historically, human beings have been on the planet for about, Homo sapiens, about 200,000 years, roughly 200,000 years, okay, round numbers. This chart obviously only starts at 8,000 BC, but it was certainly flat before that to the left. It definitely didn't come down from some on high. It was pretty much flatlined. The right index is human population, okay? And you can see today we're about 7.3 billion is where we are today, okay? And you can see that something drastic happened, there in, you can see the chart, 1781, late 1700s, early 1800s. Something clearly happened there that drove both of these factors up. So what is this Human Social Development Index? Let me give you an analogy. So if you think back to the days of cavemen and cavewomen, okay? You're living in some kind of a cave somewhere for the night. You wake up in the morning and you're hungry, okay? And so your first task is to find food. Because you didn't have very effective tools or weapons to find food or kill animals or whatever, you spent most of your day roaming, foraging for berries and grubs and roots, and maybe you got lucky and came across something that you could actually, some mammal you could actually kill and eat. But you spent the majority of your time trying to find that food. And what that meant was that by the time you got food, if in fact you even got food that day, you now started realizing that that orange orb in the sky was starting to get close to the horizon. And you realized that, wow, I need to find shelter. Because in the course of trying to find that food, you've probably now roamed maybe a mile, maybe a couple miles from your previous habitat from the night before. And maybe you got back to it, but maybe you need to go find new shelter. So you now have to find shelter. And so you're now kind of spending a great deal of your time trying to find a place to survive the night, because the nights could be very dangerous. And if you didn't find shelter, the third thing could happen, which you could become food for some beast that is out there that might be happy to eat you instead of eating some other, berry or grub for the day. And so you spent most of your time really in that kind of survival mood, finding food, finding shelter, and preventing yourself from becoming food. And as a result of those three things, you didn't have time for the fourth thing, where if the fourth thing happened, the infant mortality rate was so high that you had to have many children to even have one survive. And so as a result of that, human population stayed very, very low level millions for tens of thousands of years, okay? Until finally it started to creep up. And again, looking at the graphic here, you can see that 2000 BC it starts creeping up. Right as we go past the time of Christ, it's kind of flattening out, but it's still very low. But then all of a sudden, it just goes through the roof. So what happened here? Well, what the authors contend and what I tend to agree with is when we conquered this thing called a steam engine, it, for the first time really in human history, gave us the ability to do work of many, many people, okay? And yes, prior to that, you had domesticated animals, you had maybe some wind that did some work, you did some, water wheels near a stream, but those things were very much tied to a physical location or a weather pattern, and so they weren't predictable or reliable. It wasn't until we really conquered a machine to do the work of human beings that we were able to, for the first time, in really human history, all of a sudden had this beautiful thing that we all crave for, even to this day. And that's white space. That's just time to think and ponder. And when you have time to do that and to collaborate and network with other human beings, guess what happens? Ideas flow, innovations occur. That spark occurs and you realize there's a better way of doing this or a better way of doing that. And all of a sudden you go through the 1800s and you are just in a race for trying to, everything from refrigeration to electrification, internal combustion engines, diesel engines. We go from sail to steam powered ships that first are fueled by coal, then by oil, then eventually nuclear power. Think of all those things. And if I look at the 1900s, the 20th century, in naval warfare alone, I mean, the airplane, the aircraft carrier, the submarines, nuclear power. We go from cannonballs to rifle barrels to missile systems. And now we're reaching into space with systems. So it's just an incredible pace of technological change that really is still happening to this day. And you can think about your personal life, iPhones and Android devices, or whatever your thing of choice is. All of that is still racing at you at breakneck speed. And we are yet again at a place where I think the human mind is full. And so we are yet again trying to crave for that thing called white space that will once again allow us to go to the next level of humankind. And I think the thing that's going to help us get there is this thing we tend to call artificial intelligence, which will, I think, unload the brain, the human, all the clutter. It'll help get rid of that. And once again, give us back enough space that we can really go to the next level. That combined with the internet and the collaboration of ideas of now billions of people, the sky's the limits, folks. It's actually really, really exciting. All right, let's go to the next slide. But nothing comes without a price. Because of all that clutter, because of all that stuff going on, we tend to live in a very, what I would call, complex or chaotic world. And we've got to learn to deal with that world differently than we've dealt with the world in the past. This is a thing called the Cynefin framework. It's Cynefin. And it's a framework for making decisions, okay? A gentleman named David Snowden, an IBM researcher back in the late 90s, came up with this idea. And let me just kind of walk you through the slide. So, if you think back to when you were a kid, maybe you're really only an elementary school kid, life was pretty simple. Okay, and this is kind of akin to, I think, humanity probably back in the 1700s, maybe before the steam engine. It maybe changed after that. I don't know. But some of this is your age related. Some of it is temporal in human timescales. But in a simple world, you basically, this is akin to as a kid learning math, right? Simple math. You put one block on the table, and mom or dad tells you one block, and then mom or dad puts another block on the table and says 2 blocks. And so you in your brain are starting to recognize that 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, and those relationships are very logical, and it's very much a sense categorized with something that's in your brain that you've seen before, and then respond. This is a world of best practices. Okay, and this is the world that all of us would love to be in right now. Unfortunately, most of us are not in this world anymore. Maybe when I retire and I'm actually on that proverbial rocking chair sitting on the big island somewhere, maybe, but not yet. The next one above it, so if you go up from simple, you get to this world that's complicated. This is the world that I equate to kind of when I was in high school, maybe even a junior officer on my first submarine. This is a world of kind of good practices, and this is where cause and effect are separated over time and space. Okay, that's kind of the way the author describes this. In this world, you have to find a subject matter expert to help you with the problem. Because you might sense that there's water pouring out of the cabinet under your sink, and you analyze that and go, "Ooh, that's not good." You got to respond, and the response could be, "I'm going to go down to my basement and get the wrench, and I'm going to go do this myself." Or you might just say, "I'm going to pick up the phone and call the subject matter expert, the plumber, and let them come deal with it." But there's usually an answer to these kind of problems in the complicated world. And you can usually figure them out by sensing and analyzing. And then you respond appropriately with either your own best practice that you've gained over time, over the good practice, or you've got a subject matter expert to come in and do it for you. The top left is complex. And this is where I contend we actually spend most of our time today. And I think that's different from even 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, we were mostly complicated. I think now we're mostly complex. In the complex world, cause and effect are only coherent in retrospect and do not repeat. So it's kind of like only in hindsight can I actually make that connection. So this world is much different than a simple world of subject matter expertise. In this world, you actually probe the system. You got to probe, push on the balloon and see how, and sense what it does, and then you respond accordingly. Okay, so you got to probe the system with some kind of stimuli, sense it, and then respond. This world might take many subject matter experts because you're not sure which one you need. So you may need 4 or 5, and then when you actually sense what happens to the system when you probe it, you then respond with the right team to go solve the problem. This is the world of emergent practices. Okay, you go down to the bottom left, chaotic. Okay, chaotic world. There's no cause and effect relationship is perceivable. Okay, this is the day of 9/11. Okay, so in A world like that, a day like that, or a world like that, you have to take decisive action. And then you have to sense and respond. So think about 9/11. Plane hits the World Trade Center. There's a lot of conjecture about what a terrible navigation error. Is it a weather problem? No, it's a beautiful blue sky day. It couldn't be a weather problem. Next plane hits. Okay, something's wrong. We've got to do something about this right now. Scramble jets out of DC. Let's start figuring out what else is going on. In the time they're doing that, another plane hits the Pentagon. Another plane is kind of wandering across the airspace into Pennsylvania and crashes in a field. But what do? We take decisive action. Land every plane in North American airspace now. Sense what happens. No other crashes, no other terrorist attacks. Nothing else happens. Respond. Restore the bridges in and out of DC, open the tunnels and bridges into New York City. Days and weeks later, start restoring airspace over North America. That's the world of novel. It's a novel world. It's a new world. It's a world we've never seen before. Some would contend that the coronavirus is kind of like that. I mean, we had Spanish flu 100 years ago, but in our time scales, none of us knew what that was like. So for us, it's novel. So this I think, this is kind of the black swan events. This is the world that we can trip in and out of very carefully, but if we're not, or very easily if we're not careful. There's an interesting part of the book or part of the discussion that David Snowden makes is that you cannot go from chaotic back to simple. There's like a cliff there. You have to go back from chaotic to complex to complicated to simple, if you can ever get to simple. Absence of all of these areas, these frameworks, is disorder. Okay, that's not a good place for any of us. But I think it's instrumental to understand the world we live in, because if you're trying to react to the world as if it's simple but it's really complex, you're going to be spinning wheels and you're going to be hitting that proverbial brick wall continuously, and you're going to wonder, why is this not working for me? I don't understand this. I thought I understood this. You're on the wrong playing field, or in the wrong sport, wrong game. And I think, okay, this may be heretical, but I think that we are continuing to play the same game today, whether it's with the economy, with warfare, whatever it is. I think we're in the wrong game. I think we're trying to play a game that existed back in 1985. I think the game's changed. And there's a few of us that are starting to see this. The problem is, don't know exactly what the game is yet. And this is where smart people like you, with outside ideas that aren't tainted by 30 plus years of experience, might have an idea that could spark some thought that might push us in the right direction. Next slide. Okay, so that gets me after the next slide here, that is about reimagining naval power. And so if we're truly in the wrong game, if we're on the wrong ball field, how do we reimagine what that ball field should be? So how do we reimagine what naval power should be? I think this quote is instrumental too, because a lot of times we try to think it's something or some tech that's going to actually get us out of the problem. I think tech's critical, don't get me wrong, but you've still got to recognize it's really about people. So oftentimes innovation in military sense is less about technology than about operational organizational transformation. So when I talk about reimagining naval power, I'm talking about reimagining everything from the acquisition process to the tech thing. So maybe it's not a ship one day, maybe it's something else. I don't know what it is, but I think it's an important point to know. This comes out of a book called The Kill Chain by Christian Brose, by the way, a good read if anybody out there is a kind of a military history kind of person, because it talks a lot about kind of how we got here in the military sense. Next slide. Okay, so this is an interesting quote. So Admiral Chester Nimitz, right after World War II, when he was the chief of naval operations, said this: what the future Navy will be like, we cannot say as yet. Now, it's interesting to note that on the day he said this, the U.S. Navy was comprised of 3 million personnel, including 484,000 Marines, 170,000 members of the Coast Guard. We had 28 aircraft carriers, 70 escort carriers, 22 heavy cruisers, 24 battleships, 48 light cruisers, 2 cruisers, 373 destroyers, 365 destroyer escorts, and 240 submarines. That is the largest Navy on the entire planet, times, I don't know how many, you could add every other Navy on the planet at the time up, and it wouldn't even come close to this. And he says this at that moment in time. And I think that's pretty insightful. I think he recognized that the Navy could take many forms, and that in fact, if you think far enough into the future, it may look totally different. I mean, maybe it's like, it's going to be a bunch of starships. I don't know, but I do think he's right. And I think we're actually at a pivotal point in history where we're starting to realize that it's going to be different. We're just struggling with defining what that is and then mapping a course to get there. Next slide. Okay, so here is some of how you can help us. And so this is kind of the talk about small business. A lot of opportunities here. You can see we've actually got an active BAA out right now that closes on the 22nd of October. You can see there the focus areas on the right. And then there's another one coming out here sometime early next year, and we'll get those focus areas out once we get closer. But these are ways you can help us, okay? And I'll give you a website here. Next slide. Okay, so here is my Office of Small Business Naval. This is my O&R Small Business Office, and so Ellen and Andrew here are kind of my entry points, and you can see their email addresses there. So you can reach out to them if you got thoughts or ideas, or you can go to a website here. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, before I get to that slide, one other thing. So STEM, go ahead. Okay, so STEM is also critically important for us. So developing the workforce of the future, whether they work for you or work for me, is hugely important to all of us. And right now, there's a lot of kids that I think get discouraged from continuing in STEM fields. Sometimes because maybe they're not supposed to be STEM. That's okay. And I'm not trying to make everybody a STEM kid, because that would be inappropriate. And you got to find what your passion is to go after. But I think there's a lot of kids out there. I think particularly kids, minority kids, who don't see people that look like them in the upper ranks, and so as a result, they think, "Nah, I don't want to do that. We do something else." And I think that's sad. And we need to all collectively help change that. And so actually, Mr. Jimmy Smith and I are working very closely with Navy leadership to come up with some ideas and some ways to really diversify our STEM programs and really try to encourage kids that we traditionally don't reach, try to get them excited about STEM, and then more importantly, provide both a push and a pull to try to keep them engaged in the STEM process kind of throughout what I call kind of the valley of death, which I think is somewhere between middle school and college, where a kid who is maybe really excited about science when they're in elementary school, somewhere in there either doesn't think it's cool or doesn't think it's for them because they don't see role models that look like them, and so they fall off the track. And again, I don't think every kid should be a STEM kid, but I think there's a bunch of them out there that probably should be, that aren't, for the wrong reasons, and we need to fix that. And so I would like to enlist all of your help to try to also encourage kids to stay in the STEM field again when it makes sense. Find ways if they can, come work for you, do something with your company, or just mentor them. Just go out and mentor them. I think that's hugely valuable for all of us, because it's kind of, in my perspective as a Navy guy, I think it's a national security issue, because we just don't have enough U.S. citizens, U.S. kids that are in the STEM fields. We have a lot of folks that come to this country for STEM educations that are Chinese and in other countries, other nationals, and I can't use them in the DoD because I can't get them cleared. So we need U.S. citizens in the STEM field. We need kids, and we need diversity, because the more diverse the team, the more powerful the team. It's really important. All right, well, getting off the stage slide. Next slide. All right, this has got the website for O&R on here. So if you've got questions, you've got ideas, you can go to this website. There's a thing that says if you got an idea, and it's got also links in my small business office. It also lists all of my different departments and all the codes, and within each one, you can figure out what they do, what their area of tech is, and there's a POC in each one. And so if you've got an idea, you want to try to reach in, that's how you reach into my organization. There's another website, which is not here, for my Naval Research Lab. I think it's NRL.org. If you just Google it, Naval Research Lab, NRL, Robbie's checking right now, but we'll put that on there next time. But go to that website too, because that's also a huge part of my organization, as I said earlier. Okay, I think I've already busted the time clock, but I really thank you very much for this time. Hopefully you got something out of this, and I'd love to hear, I guess, any questions or thoughts you got.
Admiral Selby, thank you. And Zoom only lets us give you a visual applause, but I think everybody's very grateful. Now, my first reaction is, wow, okay, that is amazing. And I think that chart that you showed about social development.
Valley High School, right? Chris and I went to the same high school many years ago.
That's right. That's right. We did. In fact, I rode the bus, and I was smart enough to know I should try to sit next to Lorin every day I could. And I tried to sit next to him on the bus, and I just fired questions to him. And I think I should have gone to UVA, where I could have kept asking him questions. That was the next mistake that I made. So thank you very much for that. But I think it's amazing because, dial back a couple stops when you were at Naval Surface Warfare Center and you had 17,000 scientists and engineers working for you. The budget for the naval research is immense. And what you showed us is you can't do it all. Right? I think you mentioned looking backward, it used to be we have a powerhouse machine. So we have many questions that have kind of been submitted by the people who registered. I encourage people to type in questions in Q&A, but I have some from folks already. And the first one is just recognizing that with the stage you set, how do you look to small business and the streamlining and other techniques, both through SBIR and the wealth of things in small business programs? How do you see that change?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly, I do think that the best new ideas and new energy are going to come from some corner you're not expecting to come from. And again, while I do value don't get me wrong here, I do value the Northrops and the Lockheeds and the Raytheon and the big companies. I value them because they do some phenomenal work. But I still think that there's ideas out there that have not yet got into the right venue where a bigger company like that would either buy the company or utilize the tech in some other way. And so I think that's part of Jimmy's charter, it's part of my charter, is to make sure that keep you guys motivated, to keep working hard, keep putting your ideas out there. And clearly you don't do that for nothing. And so that's where we have the SBIR program, STTRs, to help provide some funding to get your ideas kind of more mature, where we can then continue to evaluate to see whether or not something we want to proceed with. And so again, I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with the program, go into the small business website, go into my ONR website, it'll link you right into that, and you can learn about it. Again, we put out broader announcements out that go out to everybody on the internet to tell you kind of what we're looking for and the timelines when you got to submit. We have done a lot of work, particularly in the last 6 months, to try to streamline the process. It used to require, I'm going to get the page count wrong, but it used to require 20 pages. I think it's now down to like 10 or something of your submittals. And that does two things. One, it made it harder for you guys. And guess what? Someone's got to review it on the government side. It made it harder for us. So we tried to make it easier for both parties here to allow folks to put in their ideas with not as much a cumbersome process, allowed us to be able to improve our cycle time on evaluating and then pushing money out the door when we thought an idea was worth pursuing. And so I think that's hugely important. And so that's something we have just done, again, in the last 6 months, recognizing that the world is continuing to rapidly march forward. We need to kind of cast a very wide net, try to evaluate the things out there, and encourage those that have good ideas to try to work with us. And I think it's really valuable. So please, I encourage you, if you're not familiar with how to work with us, go to the ONR website, and there's a section up there, how to work with ONR, and it'll walk you through some of these processes.
Thank you, sir. That's a great answer. And I also commit that all the participants who registered in Eventbrite, we have your contact details, and we will be sending you a follow-up, and you'll have all those links plus more helpful links. There's a wealth of ways that connect to the Navy, and that's one of the roles of a nonprofit partner to the Navy, to help you connect, and we'll do that. I think,
and don't think just because you're in a place like El Paso or some other landlocked part of the country that we don't want your ideas. We too. It could come from anywhere, really could. So
I think that's great, Admiral. And I think one of the reasons why we're all here today is there is a leadership in El Paso, technical, human capital, industry experience, and a lot of partnering with the federal government and with the Army, with NASA, Department of Energy. And it's a great place for Navy investment. And so I think that's something that El Paso looks to bring to the Navy as well. I'll also say we had a number of questions about, I'll preview a couple of the questions so you have them in mind, about materials and about supply chain. And I'll start with that because we have experienced a shock or disruption to the supply chain with the COVID-19 pandemic. What has that taught you, and how will you apply those lessons? How will we improve for the defense industrial base supply chain?
So let me talk about this from a human part of the supply chain. Okay, so most of us are, well, I'm not right now, but I do routinely telework. Starting like March 12th or 13th, whatever day it was, we all got the hey, go home in the DC area. Totally change our patterns of life and what we did every single day. But I think what it taught us that disruption to the innovative supply chain, as it were, could be overcome. And in some ways, I think we've also found that utilizing the technologies we already had and maybe refining them a little bit, and also relaxing a few of our rules, we actually are now able to reach more people, connect more minds with an event just like this. Okay, right here at ONR. Okay, so we used to do an all hands call we have to go down the street to another building, and we could only get, I don't know how many people, 400 people, Robbie?
Maybe 200.
Maybe 200 people, okay? I mean, I've got many more people than that in my organization. Now, every single Monday, I do a webcast for the internal webcast with the team. And I can easily get 600, 700, sometimes 1,000 folks that dial in to listen for an hour. I do it every Monday or Tuesday if Monday's a holiday. And I spend an hour, and I am reaching the entire team. And I usually have a guest. I usually spend a lot of time just talking about kind of what's on my mind, where I think we're trying to go as an organization. Some of this talk I've been giving you about technology and where it's going. It's incredibly powerful. And so this disruption is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to think differently about the way we had done business, but more importantly, think about how we want to do business going forward. So again, I'm talking about the innovation pipeline. What about laboratory work? So we had a lot of laboratory work that was disrupted because people weren't going into laboratories anymore. Naval Research Labs, some of the warfare centers. That's a little harder, but we've got some really smart folks who have been thinking through, well, how can I automate some of those processes? How can you use robotics to actually do some of the things that typically a human would have to go in to do? Maybe you're just using you got a remote camera with a robotic arm that's doing something that you used to have to go do as a human being. These are the kind of things we're trying to get after to really try to take advantage of this disruption, as tragic as it is, but take advantage of this to try to push us in a new direction. My workforce has already said, hey, we don't want to go back to like it was. We do not want to go back to that. Now, some want to come in more, but they don't want to go back to a 9 to 5 grind. It's not 9 to 5 because we work a lot longer than that, but it's, I'm getting after. They don't want to go back to that kind of a grind. They want to have the flexibility to telework more, to have more of these video kind of things. So how do you think, you got to think through, how do you want the future to be? Envision that, reimagine that, and let's go do this. Don't just go back to what it was, because I think that was already sub-optimized. Again, back to my earlier discussion about technology, we've been operating back in 1985 for far too long. It's just, we got stuck there because it worked great. As a military, as a country, we had a tremendous economic and military advantage. We got very complacent, I think, with our lives, and we allowed things to kind of slowly degrade as others got, went up an economic slope, went up the military slope, and we just kind of stayed static. We have got to change the way we do business. And it's everything from the way we think, the way we do experiments, the way we do supply chain issues, the way we fight. All of it's got to change. So I think this is a wake-up call. And if we don't figure out a way to benefit from this and really to take this and launch the next level, then shame on us.
Thank you. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. We have many folks on the call who are interested in advanced manufacturing combined with advanced materials. And in fact, we had several questions about your priorities in materials. And we have composites, we have metal additive manufacturing. We have a number of folks with different points of view. What's your point of view on near term on advanced manufacturing and advanced materials performance?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things here, but one, kind of think about supply chain issues. If I can get away from having to ship a fully formed valve or component from point A to some ship in the Indian Ocean or wherever the ship is, if all I'm doing is shipping bags of materials, say, powders, say, and I've got the ability either on the platform or on some nearby land facility to manufacture that component, that will simplify things greatly. We've actually done a lot of experimentation in this area. Right now, today, I don't know how many carriers, but we had, when I was in my last job, we had 2 aircraft carrier strike groups that had advanced manufacturing labs on different ships in the strike group. And we were actually working mostly polymer based. I hadn't gotten into metals yet, but we were trying to show what you could do with those printers with sailors with great ideas on those ships. It is phenomenal, the ideas that come out from the workforce. We're working in metals as well. We had an experiment that O&R did at Car-Rock, one of our warfare centers outside DC, back when I was an SWC commander, so probably 4 or 5 years ago. And we had actually a motion table to simulate the motion that a ship would be under in different sea states. And we had printers set up on these tables to try to show what was the impact if you didn't try to dampen the motion. What did it do to the printing structure and the grain structure and all that? And then how would you effectively dampen that and try to provide as stable a platform as you could? And so that was a lot of great experimentation was done there. So I think advanced manufacturing from a logistics standpoint will simplify things greatly, but then from the ability of the platform to solve its own problems underway at sea without having to reach back to some supply depot is tremendous. And so I think that alone, logistics aspects, make advanced manufacturing a game changer. But then when you bring into play the design space that gets opened up by advanced manufacturing, this is even more exciting because now you're able to actually manufacture shapes and forms that you just cannot make in a subtractive manufacturing way. You can't do it. So it opens the design space, I mean, tremendously, with everything from propulsors that may be on a future submarine or unmanned underwater vehicle, propeller shapes, other things that you just, internals of a heat exchanger. The amount of surface area that you can actually create with different shapes and structures is actually absolutely mind-blowing. So it's really exciting, and I think that's another transformative technology that we're just beginning to tap and scratch the surface of.
I want to thank you so much. We will bring it. All those areas, so much excitement in El Paso and the folks from outside the El Paso region. We're all going to stay connected. There's going to be a lot of good follow-up, and we'll make sure you stay posted with that. Thank you, Admiral Selby, for your time. And I want to turn it over just for a couple brief words from Dr. Chowdhury and the El Paso Chamber to close. As I do, I also want to thank, Robert Smith and Jimmy Smith. These are your sort of twin focal points for small business in the Navy. They have their whole team here. They knew their team wouldn't answer questions. It's a show of force, a show of interest, a show of commitment. So thank you to the Department of the Navy. Dr. Chowdhury, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Selby, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And my first thing is please visit us.
I will. I'll come back. We're going to find that steak restaurant together. All right.
Yes. Please come and visit us. This is an amazing place, and we have so much capability. Chris, thank you for telling Ryan and myself as a regional economic development leader, which we are actually clueless professors, and with the sheer passion of our community, we want to make a difference here. And so we have some amazing companies here, Admiral, and they have really great capability, need a little bit of adjustment, need a little bit of a capability enhancement for them to be a big part of America's defense supply chain. So this is the whole point of it, that using our research preeminence to create economic prosperity. So this is what we have been doing. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to mention two industries here. Lark Industries are in the call. They make all the rocket hardware for my test facility. They have great capability of high temperature machining and do an amazing job. So every parts they made, my student designed it and we test fired it, so it worked. Also, we have Prod Design here, amazing capability in robotics. So these are the companies that are waiting to take advantage of America's defense manufacturing and grow from there. So I cannot thank you enough and your team for taking this time to speak with us. Thank you so much, sir. And I'll hand over to BJ and David Jerome.
Thanks, Dr. Chowdhury. It's a pleasure to have you on this call as well, and you really do tie much of this together for us here in the region. Before we formally thank you, Admiral Selby, I would like to turn it over to our CEO, David Jerome, if you have a couple of words for us. David, from your perspective.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to that presentation. I don't even know where to begin, Admiral. I love that from beginning to end. I will just say this, that I am so delighted in a day and age of sort of quick fix and things of this sort to be embracing complexity and understanding the importance of it, especially with COVID-19 and things of this sort. So I can only say, from an amateur's perspective, I'm certainly no expert in the military, but I will only say that it gives me great comfort to know that we are protected by individuals such as yourself, our shores, and the Navy obviously does a terrific job to make the United States not only a safe place, but also to protect our businesses and grow them as well. This kind of activity, I think, is inherently, as you were saying, not only a matter of national security, but I think it makes everybody's lives better. Work and jobs and the dignity of work is important too. And I'm very pleased to say that as in most things, the military is doing more than their fair share. So thank you for that. And I would also just say that very quickly, to sort of mirror what Vijay was saying, I think, you know, Dr. Wicker and Dr. Chaudhary are amazing partners. Business is fully committed to supporting the efforts of UTEP, and Jimmy Smith and Chris and you folks too have been wonderfully generous with us. We're here to promote our businesses and help the military in achieving its objectives, which we are very happy to do. Workforce, the city, and Congressman Escobar's office have been wonderful in helping us with that as well. So with that, I probably wore you guys out, but I was very excited by what I heard today and just wanted to say thanks. And by the way, I know where that steakhouse is, and it's on us when you're back. So.
I'll get there one day. Don't worry. This COVID has got to go away, but once it happens.
Vijay, back to you.
Thank you. General Selby, just fascinating. I echo David's comments from the decision-making framework to you know, how the Navy and you are transforming the way you drive innovation, the BAAs, everything you presented. Just wonderful, phenomenal stuff that we needed to catch up on. And so we greatly appreciate your time on behalf of the board of directors of the El Paso Chamber and our membership. Jimmy Smith, Robert Smith, thank you for your leadership in the small business component. We're good. It's good to get to know you both better. And Chris, thank you so much for your leadership on the call and facilitating this. So we would like to thank everybody for participating. And with that, we'll go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great being with all of you.